Brother Philip Hayworth, a circuit servant from Perth, will be directing this. The title, Let No Man Ever Look Down on Your Youth.
I'm all alone by myself. Well, you could come along, you know. You know I'm not well enough to go to the meeting tonight. No, or last week, or last month, or last year. Now, what's that supposed to mean? Mother, who are you trying to fool? How long do you think you can go on like this? How any of us can go on like this? What would you know about it, Kathy? You're just a girl. Wait till you're as old as I am. Wait till you've been married. Mother, you keep forgetting that we all feel as bad as you do. You just don't seem to realise. I just hope you don't have the miserable life I've had. I just hope your whole life isn't torn apart. Mother, you just don't seem to realise that life keeps moving ahead. That's all in the past now. It's over and done with. Please, Mother, please try to be realistic. Realistic? What do you know about reality? You don't even begin to know. Why do you think only of yourself? Do you think my life hasn't been torn apart too? Do you think these last 2 years have just been a bed of roses for me or for Tim? Oh, please, Mother, I know how you must feel. How could you know how I feel? You can't know what it's like to have your whole life fall apart. Everything you've ever believed in, everything you've ever held sacred just... Oh, Mother, please don't cry. You know I can't stand it when you cry like this. You've just got to get this thing out of your mind. Look, Mother, it's been a whole 2 years now. It was a terrific shock to all of us. I was only 13. But a girl 13 can feel things too, you know. After all, I practically idolised Daddy. But I was his wife, Kathy. I know you were, Mother dear. But why now should you let your whole life be ruined? You still have Timmy and me. It's not the same thing at all. Of course not, Mother. But we still love you very much. We want to see you happy and... I don't think I'll ever be happy again. How can I with this thing hanging over me? Mother, there isn't anything hanging over you. Not unless you put it there yourself. You know that's not true, Kathy. You know how people feel about these things, how they talk. Mother, no one is talking about you. At least not what happened 2 years ago when... So people are talking about me, aren't they, Kathy? Don't deny it, you just said. I just meant that the brothers at the hall are worried about you, that's all. That's the last thing in the world I want. Pity. I know how people feel about these things. I know what they always say. They always blame the wife. No one is blaming you for anything. They just wish you would come back to the Kingdom Hall, that's all. I sure haven't seen any indication of it. No one comes round to see me here. Well, can you blame them? You've completely cut yourself off. Oh, they've tried. How many times have I had to say to people, Mother isn't feeling well today. Can you call some other time? And the next time the same thing will happen all over again. After all, Mother, it's just not natural to keep brooding like this. You've got to begin to get out more. Look, you've hardly even been to the store to do any shopping. Now you're accusing your mother again. I guess you think I like it this way. Maybe you think the whole thing's my fault too. Oh, of course not, Mother. It's just that by now you should begin to... I didn't think my own 2 children would turn against me too. You think I'm putting on about being sick, don't you? I guess you think that... What I really think is that you've got another bottle hidden around here someplace. What are you accusing your mother of, Kathy? Mother, quit trying to act so innocent. You know what I mean. Do you think Timmy and I both don't know how you've been getting up in the middle of the night for weeks now and digging up a bottle from someplace and then taking it off to your room? Kathy, And then the next day you'll feel so sick that you won't even get out of bed for a day or two. Go on, say it. Your mother's a drunken alcoholic. Oh, Mother, poor Tim's at his wit's end to know what to do. Where you can find places to hide those bottles, I don't know. Please, try to look at this thing. At least, try to understand that we need you. More so now than ever. Oh, Tim does all right. After all, he's almost 20 now. But, Mother, he needs you too. At least he's entitled to your cooperation. Now, just look what he's done since he got out of school. He's worked up a TV repair business that supports all of us, and he still finds time to pioneer. Now, how many other young folks of his age would do a thing like that? And he's taken all the load of responsibility right from your shoulders. But instead of encouraging us or helping us in any way, you just...
How can you speak to me this way, Kathy? You make me sound as though I'm an ungrateful drag on both of you. You'd better watch your disposition, young lady. You're an awful lot like your father, you know. Timmy was more like my side of the family. But you have that same selfish, I'll take care of me attitude that your father had.
That's not fair, Mother. What Daddy did was bad, awful bad, and I can't forgive him for it. Well, not yet anyway. But he wasn't like that. He never did told lies.
I knew it. I knew it. You're taking your father's side against me. How you can stand up for that man after what he did to you and to me, your mother. But you don't care about that. That's the last thing in the world. Now I know you think this whole thing's my fault. Now I know you're blaming me for what your father did. Why don't you come right out and say it?
Oh, stop it, Mother. Stop it. I can't stand any more of this. Oh, sometimes I wish I could just go out. Just do anything to get away from this constant bickering.
Go on, why don't you? Then you'd really have something to blame your mother for. That would give you something to talk about, something to throw back into my face.
Mother! Kathy! Stop this immediately!
Oh, Tim, what am I going to do? I'm so confused. No, that's wrong. I tried so hard to be nice to Mother. Honest, I did, but everything I say...
Go ahead, Timothy. Spoil her, give in to her, that's all she needs.
Now, Mother, you know I love both of you too much to spoil either one of you. But, well, somehow we've just got to find a way to...
Well, while you're thinking about it, I'm going to my room to lie down. All this has given me a terrible headache.
Oh, Tim, I'm so confused. I just feel all mixed up inside. Dad and Mum seem so strong in the truth. We used to have such good times together. How can a thing like this happen? What's going to happen to us? Oh, sometimes I feel so lost.
I know, Kathy, but you're forgetting one thing. Jehovah never forsakes us. If he ever turns his back on us, it's only because we've forsaken him first. Now, Kathy, don't ever do that.
But, Tim, it's so hard sometimes.
I know it is, Sis. That's what Mother's finding out. When Dad was disfellowship 2 years ago, it was a terrific shock to Mother. She's just never gotten over it. We have to keep trying to help her, that's all.
Yes, but what about us, Tim? I can't keep on like this. Look, I don't even feel like going to the meetings anymore. Sometimes I almost resent Mother. And I'm getting that I don't even want Brother Shepherd to come up and speak to me at the Kingdom Hall. I just feel that he's picking at me every time he says anything.
Oh, Kathy, Brother Shepherd is very kind to you. Why, he's been especially good to both of us.
Oh, I don't know. Sometimes I think Diana's right.
Diana?
Sometimes I almost feel sorry for Buzz, too.
Hey, hold on a minute, Sis. You are in a bad way tonight. Anyone that thinks that those two kids...
Oh, I don't know, Tim. After all, what's so bad about either one of them, really? Just because they're outspoken.
Okay, we'll let that go by for now, kid. We're going to be late for the meeting if we don't get a move on. But you know, you and I haven't had a brotherly, sisterly talk for some time now, and it looks like we better settle down to it immediately. Let's see now. I've got a TV job I've just got to finish up after magazine work tomorrow. We've got to keep food in that little tummy of yours somehow, you know. Then Sunday it'll be too late. So Monday night, you and I are going to sit down for a while.
Oh, okay, Tim, but...
Now, no buts, Kathy. You just have growing pains, that's all. If you didn't care about things so much, you wouldn't be so upset. You know, I think I'd worry more about you if you weren't upset, if you didn't care. Now, I'm sure the answers won't be too hard to find. Come on, let's get out of here.
Is often viewed as just a part of life. But growing up can also be an extremely painful process. In fact, and especially in this present degenerating system of things, some never survive the ordeal. And many who do are scarred beyond recovery. But you young folks in the New World Society, look, you have an altogether different prospect in view. That is, you can have. But how do you personally feel about it? Well, maybe the next couple of hours will help you to see yourself better than you've ever seen yourself before. When you watch what happens to Kathy and Tim, remember, young brothers and sisters, it could be happening to you. Maybe in some cases it actually will be. Well, how are you going to work it out? Do you know what to do so that no man will ever look down on your youth? But you parents aren't going to be left out of it either. No. Your lives are too inseparably linked with those of your children for that. Maybe you'll see a little of yourself here someplace too. That's entirely possible, because every incident involved in the outworking of Kathy's problem really happened. All these things didn't happen to the same people, but they all did happen to our brothers and sisters in the New World Society. Like many young folk, Kathy doesn't really know what her problem is. But before her big brother Tim is going to get a chance to talk to her about it, many more things are going to happen to complicate and yet to clarify their lives. Now, brothers, let's follow them to the Kingdom Hall and look in after the service meeting.
How are you tonight, Buzz? Okay. Tell your folks we missed them tonight, will you? Okay. How did you enjoy the meeting tonight? Okay, I guess. Should make it a lot easier for us to start home Bible studies now, don't you think, Buzz? I guess so. Buzz, have you thought any more of the possibility of getting a home Bible study of your own? Sure, but who wants one? I never meet anybody. Well, Buzz, sometimes people don't respond to us because, well, they don't really understand why we're there. You know, I think especially young people have to be particularly careful about how they appear when they're in the ministry because, well, sometimes people just don't know how to take young folks these days. But if they're neatly dressed and they look like ministers, well, then they're generally more inclined to listen to what we have to say. Are you bugging me about my clothes again? Well, Buzz, we have talked to you about it a number of times, you know. Now, don't you agree that a nice shirt and tie and closely cropped hair is a little more befitting the appearance that most people would expect in a minister? There's nothing wrong with my clothes when I go from door to door. Well, Buzz, why don't you dress like that when you come along to the meetings then? I wasn't on the meeting tonight. I'm never on the meetings anymore. Why, you gave a talk in the ministry school just a short time ago. And I wore my tie. Yes, you did. But why not dress up a little for every meeting? I know you'd feel much more like a part of the meeting if you did. And besides, it'd look good for those that are new here, those coming in for the first time. It'd set for them a good example. You know, CEO, you never come up and talk to me unless you've got something to bug me with. Why don't you get off my back? You know, what we need around here is a new administration. That boy, Harold Sawyer. I don't know, sometimes I wonder. Did you hear what Buzz just said, Tom? What we need around here is a new administration. Oh. Yes, I heard him. What can you do with a kid like that? That's it, Tom. He is just a kid. Seems like some of them just don't want to grow up. But Harold's mother wouldn't let him, even if he did want to. She holds him down so that every time he gets the opportunity to break loose... That's what worries me, Tom. What will he do someday? But don't worry too much about that comment of his. Can't you just hear his mother talking in that tone? So I told the CO off. Always bugging me about my clothes.
Buzz, why do you keep calling Brother Shepherd CO?
Well, he is the congregation overseer, isn't he? Get it? Congregation overseer. CO.
Well, sure, I get it all right, but it isn't very respectful.
He treats us like kids.
Attaboy, Buzz. Speak up for our rights. Why don't you start a demonstration of some sort, Buzz? You know, placards and all.
Listen who's talking. Diana, model citizen herself. Come off it, Diana. You know you get it just as much as I do.
Diana, isn't your dress just a little too short? Harold, when was the last time you had your hair cut?
Boy, I tell you, I get so sick of it sometimes.
Well, like I say, Buzz, start a demonstration. Let's put on a big show. Oh, come on, you two. You know it isn't that bad.
Well, why don't you get your hair cut then, Buzz? Do you think all the persecution is worth it?
What's the matter with my hair? Besides, whose business is it anyhow? Do you think I want to look like a creep or something? No one wears their hair short anymore. No one except old people, that is. I tell you, they make too much of all this stuff.
Well, look, I don't blame you for being upset, Buzz. But if you didn't argue with Brother Shepherd so much about it, well, then maybe he'd leave you alone more.
You know, the trouble with you is, Buzz, you just don't project the big brother image. Now, if you could look and act more like Timothy...
Oh, he gives me a pain. You girls give me a pain.
What you're saying is, Buzz, that you're just one big pain.
You make me sick.
Diana, I don't think I appreciate your reference to Tim in that tone.
Oh, come off it, Kathy. You know I only said that to rile up Buzz. Say, Kathy, a couple of brothers in Old Town congregation, they'd like to take us to a movie some night. How about next Saturday, a week from tomorrow?
Oh, I don't know, Diana. Tim doesn't approve of my...
Oh, come on, Kathy. That big brother, it's okay for jokes, but really, after all, Kathy, it's with a couple of the brothers.
Well, I guess if it's just to a movie, it'll be all right. Only don't say anything to Tim about it.
And have him get his big black snake whip out for me too. Are you kidding?
But if you don't tell me what it is that's bothering you, Benny, how can I help you? You sure you don't want to talk about it? Honest, Tim, I can't. I don't dare. What do you mean you don't dare, Benny? Well, he said he'd beat me up if I told anyone. Who told you that? Please don't ask me, Tim. Don't even say I said anything. Honest, I know he'd beat me up if he knew. Well, I can see that you're very upset about something, Benny, and I sure would like to help you. Maybe you better talk to Brother Shepherd about it. Oh, no, I couldn't do that. That's the last thing I could do. I'd get it for sure then. Well, if you'd like to talk to me about it sometime, I'll be glad to listen, and I don't mind taking you home tonight. It's no trouble.
Don't let me interrupt you, Benny. Were you confessing all your sins to Big Brother here?
I wasn't saying anything. Honest, I wasn't, Buzz. We were just talking. Benny just asked me if I was going his way tonight, and, well, I told him I'd drop him off.
What's the matter, Benny? Afraid to walk home by yourself? Or are you just getting too old, Benny? I'll walk you home if you want me to, Benny.
Oh, no, it's all right, Buzz. Thanks a lot, but Tim's going to take me home. I'll go with him. I'll wait for you over here, Tim.
Benny's some kid. Always got some wild story or other. What do you have to say this time, Tim?
Well, he didn't say anything, Buzz. Do you think there's something he should have?
No, of course not. Why? Why would I think something like that? You know how kids are. Always talking. Now look, Tim, there's something I want to ask you. What has the overseer got against me? Why doesn't he ever put me on the service meeting?
Well, I don't know, Buzz. It could be, of course, that he's overlooked it. But on the other hand...
Do you know how long it is since I was on a service meeting?
Well, no, I can't say that I do.
Well, it was the 15th of last November.
Well, that's been quite a while, all right.
Honest now, Tim, what has he got against me? Why is he always picking on me?
Well, Buzz, I don't really think Brother Shepherd is picking on you. You do have part in the meetings. Why, you give talks in the theocratic ministry school.
Yes, I know that. But why doesn't he put me on the service meeting? You know, I think he's picking on me because he doesn't like the way I dress.
Buzz, why do you want to be on the service meeting?
Well, everybody gives talks in the ministry school, but after a while, if I'm not on the service meeting, people begin to think that, well, who am I? Just nobody.
Well, let's look at it like this, Buzz. You had a talk on the theocratic ministry school, just 3 weeks ago now, didn't you?
Yes, but
Well, now, how long did you actually talk, Buzz?
Well, it was a little short, I guess, but...
You talked just 3 minutes, didn't you?
Well, something like that, I guess.
Now, be honest with me, Buzz. Can you say you really put everything you had into that talk? Did you really work diligently on it? Did you say, now I'm going to make this the best talk I've ever given in the school, a talk the brothers will really enjoy, one they'll get something worthwhile out of? Buzz, you had 6 minutes assigned to you, and you used only 3. How much did you actually put into the preparation of that talk?
Well, I didn't have much time. What with schoolwork and all that?
Well, that might be, Buzz, but wouldn't the same thing be true of a service meeting part? Remember, on the service meeting, we're expected to have something to teach the brothers. We're expected to be able to give them a reason to make it worth their while to listen. Now, if you only use half the time assigned you on the School for a Student talk, well, what kind of a recommendation do you think that is for a part on the service meeting? And another thing, Buzz, when you give your comments in the Watchtower study...
I always comment at every meeting.
Well, yes, Buzz, you do. Once every meeting. But don't you think sometimes your comments could cover some point not so obvious in the paragraph? Why, you could even look up one of the unquoted scripture citations and show how it applies to the paragraph.
Look, what's wrong with just a brief comment? At least I'm commenting.
That's just the point, Buzz. I don't mean you should give a long comment, but you're talking about teaching the brothers. You want to get on the service meeting, something that's reserved for those that have demonstrated maturity in the congregation.
Well, now, there's another thing that always bugs me. Just because we're kids, some of the brothers think we can't do anything.
It's not because we're young, Buzz, but if young people don't prove that they can do something...
Look, doesn't the Bible say something about our brothers not looking down on our youth?
I think you must be referring to what Paul wrote to Timothy. But, Buzz, what did Paul mean by that? Here, let's read it. It's in 1 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 12. And there he says, "Let no man ever look down on your youth."
That's what I mean. What's the matter with the brothers? Why don't they do what Paul tells them here?
Now, wait a minute, Buzz. I didn't finish the scripture. Listen to the rest of it. "On the contrary, become an example to the faithful ones in speaking, in conduct, in love, in faith, in chasteness." Now, doesn't that put a different light on it, Buzz? Paul isn't talking to the congregation, he's talking to you. He's talking to me, and he's talking to Timothy and all of us who are young. And how is it that we never let anyone look down on our youth? By never giving them a reason or an occasion to, by becoming examples to the faithful ones. No one's going to look down on someone who's an example, even though he may be young in years. But, Buzz, we have to prove ourselves. And if we do, well, how can anyone properly look down on our youth? Now, take the first thing he says, to be an example in speaking. Buzz, in what way in the congregation have you recommended yourself for mature recognition through your speaking? In the theocratic ministry school? Or in the Watchtower study?
You're always making something out of nothing.
Well, you asked me about it, Buzz. Now, if you really want to be recognised as a mature young brother, why not copy the example of mature older brothers in the congregation? But if you persist in copying the example of immature young people in the old world, well, how can you object if the brothers look at you as, well, an immature young brother copying the old world? I'll tell you what I'll do, Buzz. The next time you get an assignment in the theocratic ministry school, I'll be glad to help you. Well, I've had a little more experience than you. I'm a little older and a little longer in the truth. And I'm sure that if the brothers realise that you're trying to be an example of what Jehovah expects of his people, they'll not look down on you just because you're young. You'll be given a chance to expand your privileges.
Yeah, I'll see. Hello, Tim.
Hello, Brother Shepherd.
I see you were just talking to Harold.
Yes, I was. He'd like a part on the service meeting sometime, but, well, I talked to him a little about it. I try to show him how to become better qualified for it.
Well, I'm glad you did, Tim. I hope that you can help him in some way. But, Tim, what I really wanted to talk to you about tonight, well, look, it's come to a stage where Brother Helper and I are going to have to do something.
You mean about Mother?
Oh, Tim, I'm glad you understand. I hate this, but, well, you know how things are. I understand the problems that your mother's facing, the trouble that she's had. We don't want to make it any worse for her. We want to try and help her.
Well, Brother Shepherd, I certainly hope you can do something.
Tim, we want to try and get her back into the congregation, because if she stays away too long, she may suffer untold spiritual damage. Besides, if she doesn't get over this feeling that she has, because of what happened, it could cause her to turn to one thing or another to try and bolster herself up, and this could cause physical damage too.
Yes, I know what you mean, Brother Shepherd. Frankly, I don't think we've got any time to lose.
And besides, I'm thinking of young Kathy too, Tim, and the effect that all of this might have on her.
Yes, that's what really worries me, Brother Shepherd. I try, but...
I know you do, Tim, but after all, Kathy needs a mother's care, a mother's attention and interest. Tim, I thought I'd tell you what we plan on doing so that you'll know why we're calling.
Well, I appreciate it very much, Brother Shepherd. My mother needs such a lot of help. I sure hope that she'll respond.
I do too, Tim. Look, we'll probably drop by tomorrow sometime, okay?
Okay, Brother Shepherd. Good night.
Good night, Tim.
I think maybe I can go home by myself after all, Tim. Well, what made you change your mind, Benny? Are you sure it's all right? Yes, I guess it's okay. You didn't change your mind because Buzz has already gone, did you? No, of course not. Why, did Buzz say something? Did he tell you anything? Well, no, Benny, he didn't. Is there anything he could have told me? Well, I don't know. Look, Benny, why don't you get it off your chest? Has Buzz been bothering you in some way? Well, look, Tim, I've got to talk to someone. Promise me you won't tell anyone. Well, I can't promise that, Benny, if it's something that's that important. But I don't want you to get into any kind of trouble. You know that. Well, it's just that he talked me into going to an acid party. An acid party? Yeah, drugs. But I didn't mean to do it, honest, Tim. And then afterward, well, I got scared. And the way things happened and all, I told Buzz I wasn't going to go anymore. And then he said he'd beat me up if I told anyone. Benny, you mean that you and Buzz and some of the other boys were actually taking drugs? I only did it once, honest, Tim. But the other boys, well, I guess they've been doing it for some time now. But Benny, why? Why would you ever do anything like that? You know it's wrong. I know it is, Tim. But they kept needling me and daring me, and so finally I said, okay, but I don't want to do anything like that again. It was awful. Well, I can imagine it was. But look, Benny, you're going to have to talk to Brother Shepherd about this. This isn't anything you can keep to yourself. It's far too serious. You know that anything like that is a direct violation of Bible principles. Now, you can't allow anything like that to go on in the congregation, now can you? No, I guess not. But I'm really afraid of Buzz. Then, Benny, that's all the more reason why you should say something. If you're afraid of Buzz because of what he would do to you, well, aren't you afraid of what he would do to someone else? Well, I never thought of that. Maybe I'd better talk to Brother Shepherd after all. Well, I'm glad to see that you feel that way about it, Benny. I think you should. And I think you should tell him the whole story. All right, I'll talk to him the first chance that I get, but I think I can go home by myself now. Thanks anyway, Tim. Well, okay, Benny, if you're sure it's all right. Now, take care, and I'll see you Sunday. Good night.
Hello, Brother Shepherd. Hello, Brother Helper. Tim's not home right now.
Well, that's okay, Clara. As a matter of fact, we didn't come to see Tim. We wanted to talk to you.
Oh? What did you want to see me about?
Well, is it okay if we come in for just a moment, Clara? We've missed you. It's been quite a long time. So Tom and I thought it'd be good if we could drop by, say hello, and just see how you've been getting along.
Oh, all right. Come on in.
Good. Thanks, Clara.
I haven't been feeling very well lately. I haven't been able to get to the meetings. I suppose Tim told you.
Yes, he did mention that you haven't been feeling too well, Clara. You've had quite a siege of it, haven't you? So Tom and I thought we could drop by and see if there's something that we can do. Because, well, we've missed you at the meetings very much.
Tim and Kathy are always there.
Tim has done very well, Clara. He's a boy you can be proud of. And Kathy's coming along nicely, too.
Are you sure about that, Tom?
Well, we know she has her ups and downs. Most young girls do. But Kathy's a very fine girl, and I'm sure with Timothy looking after her...
Yes, I know. Timothy. I suppose you're thinking I don't look after her.
Well, Clara, it would be good if you could be along there at all the meetings with them too. I know you could do a lot more for Kathy if you could be present at all the meetings with her.
Now, why beat around the bush about it, Myron? You know why I don't go to the meetings anymore. Do you think I want to go down there and be pointed out to every new person that walks into the Kingdom Hall as the woman who couldn't hold her husband?
Now, Clara, don't talk like that. It's over 2 years now since Orville was disfellowshipped.
2 years of hell for me, I know that. And I can just imagine the talk that's going on down there at the Kingdom Hall.
You'd be surprised to know, Clara, that the brothers don't even say a thing. Look, there's too many new things happening, too many new people coming in. Why, they're not talking about these things that happened so long ago, and besides, many of them don't even know about it.
Well, I know if I were to go down there, some of them would soon enough start talking about it.
Well, what makes you think that they'd talk any more with you than they do with Tim and with Kathy? He was their father, you know.
Now look here, Tom, that's altogether different. He was only their father, but I was his wife. I know how people talk about a man who runs off with another woman. They always blame the wife. What's the matter with her? What kind of a home did he have to go out and look for someone else? But to think that he ran off with someone like her, both of them posing in the congregation as being so righteous. Every time I think about it, I just turn over inside.
We know that, Clara, but you're going to have to forget it. It's in the past. It's over and done with. But the thing is, Clara, what are you going to do with your life and the lives of your children?
Orville didn't think anything about that. What did he care about the kids? He just picks up and off he goes and leaves me here to do everything for myself.
It's true that he showed no real love for Tim and Kathy, but why should you do the same thing? You know what he did was wrong. Why should you follow his example? Clara, children need their parents. Tim and Kathy both need you.
They don't need me. Tim's able to take care of himself. After all, he's the one who got the truth first. You know that. It was only because of him that Orville and I started to study.
Yes, and you've made a fine investment in the truth since then. But just because Orville has failed to appreciate it, does that mean that you have to? You know, Clara, the psalmist tells us that it doesn't make too much difference what the cause might be for us separating ourselves from Jehovah. The results can be just the same. Here, let me read Psalm 73 and verse 27. It says, "For look, the very ones keeping away from you will perish. You will certainly silence everyone immorally leaving you." Now, Clara, someone can separate themselves through committing an act of immorality the way that Orville did, or we can commit an act of immorality by the sin of separating ourselves like you're doing. But remember, Clara, both of these courses lead to death. Now, you're blaming Orville for what he did, and he was very wrong. You wouldn't do it, but are you any better off by what you are doing?
It isn't easy to be left alone.
No, it isn't, Clara, but we think a lot of you. We think a lot of Tim and Kathy too. We understand the trying time that you've had, but you're not giving us a chance to help you, Clara. You're not letting us get near to you. Look, I know that all the brothers down there in the congregation would do anything they could to help you get over the serious problems that you've had, to help you build a new life for yourself. But you're not giving us that chance.
But you're the overseer, Myron, and you're the assistant, Tom. How can you be so sure that others feel the same way about it?
But, Clara, why don't you give them a chance to prove it? Would we ask you if we thought you were going to be hurt more by it?
And there's another urgent need for it, Clara, in addition to saving your own life.
You still insist that children need me. What about those whose children are not in the truth?
But, Clara, you are in the truth. Do you think with the knowledge that you've gained that you can lightly throw aside your responsibility and yet not be held accountable for it? would you feel guiltless if something were to happen to Kathy?
What's the matter with Kathy?
Now, don't get excited about it, Clara. There's nothing the matter with Kathy. It's just that she's young and impressionable, and we don't want to see anything happen to her.
You think Kathy's heading for trouble?
No, not really, Clara, but we do think you should know that she seems to be influenced quite a lot by some of the young ones who are not the best example for her.
Look, Kathy's old enough to know what she ought to do. I think she can take care of herself.
She is a sensible girl in many ways, yes, Clara, but you know, a parent's responsibility doesn't end with just keeping their children out of trouble. What about the spiritual instruction that we can give them while they're still in our own home? Think of the strength and the maturity that we can give them before they're old enough to get out on their own, especially with the schools being what they are today. But you know, Clara, even down at the Kingdom Hall, they can associate with some of the young ones who are not the best example for them. Some of them, they think they know all the answers, but they don't. We try. We talk to them, we work with them, we talk to their parents, but, well, some of them just don't respond.
You mean Diana, don't you?
Yes, Diana is one of those girls that doesn't seem to be afraid of anybody or anything. Sometimes I think that's just the problem. She's a difficult girl to manage, and her mother's had quite a problem with her.
Well, why don't you talk to her mother then? Why talk to me?
Clara, we have talked to her mother. Both Tom and I felt that it was getting almost imperative that we talk to her mother to try and encourage her to hold Diana down just a little. But this is what happened. Now, Molly, we don't want you to misunderstand our reason for talking to you tonight. This is not a formal committee meeting by any means.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. At least I have some assurance I'm not going to be bounced out of here right away.
Of course not, Molly, but we do want to talk to you about something that we've mentioned before, something that we don't honestly believe you realise is as serious as it is.
You're talking about Diana again, aren't you?
Frankly, we are.
Well, what is it this time? Do you still think her dresses are too short? We've lowered them a whole inch, but I knew you wouldn't be satisfied.
It isn't that.
It is true that Diana wears her dresses shorter than anyone else at the Kingdom Hall, but then Diana is a little more progressive about most things than the other girls, don't you think?
It isn't the dressing in itself that concerns us so much, Molly, except that this is just another indication of her thinking. She is a progressive girl in many ways, yes, but is she making progress in the things that really count? Is she building for herself a secure future in Jehovah's organisation?
Diana doesn't neglect her theocratic duties.
She could be more regular, Molly, but what I want to try and impress on you is that some young people, they try and get the best out of both worlds. From the old world, they try and get success and money and recognition, and if they don't get it, they're unhappy. And from the new order, they try and get faith. But you can't get faith by hanging on to the old world, so they just end up with nothing from either world and being unhappy.
Why, I think Diana has given up lots of things.
But isn't it better to count what we've gained and not what we've given up?
Oh, you're just playing on words, Tom.
I don't mean to, Molly, but you said Diana was progressive, and progressive people are positive, not negative. So then, what is Diana gaining? In which system is she making progress?
That's right, Molly. Do you have a family Bible study with her?
You know her father isn't in the truth. Besides, she has so much homework just now.
Well, this is where your influence can be felt. You know, it says in Proverbs 29 and verse 18 that where there is no vision, the people go unrestrained. But it says, happy are they that are keeping the law. Now, what are you doing to sharpen Diana's vision of the kingdom? Do you have any spiritual discussions at all with her at home? Do you talk about the new truths from the Watchtower and how we can apply these to our lives? Do you talk about congregation experiences and expansions and so on?
Well, like I said, her schoolwork keeps her so busy.
But she does get time to get out with the boys on dates, doesn't she?
Now, wait a minute, Myron. It's all right for you to talk about family Bible studies and so on. But as for Diana and me, what either one of us does by way of recreation, that's an altogether different matter.
We're not trying to interfere with your personal lives, Molly, but it's just that Diana isn't a child anymore. Both Tom and I feel that although she's only 17, she's quite grown up for years. I don't think she realises the potential that she has. She's the type of girl that's extremely stimulating to the opposite sex.
Oh, she knows that.
Yes, I think she does. But what I mean is, I don't think she realises the danger that there is to her personally when she's alone someplace with a boy on a date.
Well, why shouldn't she be attractive to boys? I think it's time she did begin to think about these things if she's going to get married.
There's nothing wrong with a girl thinking of marrying, Molly, but it is wrong for a girl deliberately to try and provoke boys, or grown men either, into being attracted to her without any such ideas in mind.
Now, wait a minute, Myron. What are you accusing Diana of?
I'm not accusing her of anything, Molly, but haven't you noticed the way she's always putting her hands all over the boys, leaning up against them, obviously doing everything she can to make them physically aware of her presence?
No, I've never seen anything of the kind.
Well, then you should become a little more aware of what your daughter is doing and just what it means. The boys are certainly aware of it, and they draw their own conclusions. Now, all I'm saying, Molly, is that if Diana were to find herself alone with a boy or a man not in the truth, and if she didn't fulfill what everything about her suggests she's ready and willing to fulfill, she may not end up without a good beating.
Myron, what an awful thing to say.
I'm sorry, Molly. I have to be frank with you, because it's the truth. That's the way Diana looks, and that's the way she acts. I want you to be shocked if necessary, because I don't want to see anything happen to Diana. Now, you have it within your power to do something. Please, do something before it's too late. We're not just talking this way because we want to, Molly. We've been through it with others. We've seen it with those in the congregation. We've seen it with many on the outside. They think somehow they can constantly toy with immorality and yet not be overcome by it.
But, Myron, you're talking about a dedicated girl, a girl who's in the truth.
That's just it, Molly. That's why we have every reason to expect her to be different. But she doesn't give that indication. Now, understand, Molly, we're not trying to tell you how to raise Diana. That's your responsibility, and we're not going to interfere with it. But we do feel that if you don't take some positive steps to curb Diana's actions and the way she dresses, she could be heading for serious trouble.
Oh, Myron, I think you're over-exaggerating this whole thing. Diana is just a normal, healthy girl with a normal, healthy appetite for life. That's the way girls are, and boys too, and you can't change that. Someday Diana will get married and she'll settle down. Now, I wouldn't worry about her if I were you, Myron.
She's your daughter, Molly, but I am the overseer. I just hope it doesn't come to a point where I have to become directly involved because of my position in the congregation.
Oh, Myron, I think you're a calamity howler, but why? I'm not angry about it, Myron. I understand. I appreciate you talking to me very much. Thank you. Well, I guess I'll be running along now.
So you see, Clara, what we said to Molly didn't make one bit of difference.
But Diana's a strong-minded girl, Myron. Kathy's not like that.
Well, it's hard to say about Diana, Clara. We can't look into the hearts of people. Only Jehovah God can do that. But you know, 2 or 3 years ago, I would have said that Diana was the type of girl that could have been led in the right direction if she'd been given that direction. But quite frankly, Molly didn't help Diana.
How can you be so sure about that, Myron?
Well, for one thing, there's been no evidence whatsoever that she's done anything.
And don't think we're talking without some basis in fact, Clara. We thought we were helping Molly. We had hoped that it would cause her to stop and take a closer look at Diana, the way that she's been acting. But it didn't take us long to realise that just about everything we said had fallen on deaf ears.
That's right, Clara. No sooner were our backs turned than Molly began to talk to some of the others in the...
At what you just said? You know, maybe I ought to turn a little charm on Brother Helper, too, and see what he has to say about it. Now, Diana, don't overplay it.
Oh, Diana, you're really something.
So you see, Clara, instead of helping Diana, I'm afraid Molly only made matters worse for her.
Diana always was a fresh kid, even as a youngster. But you know how girls are, Myron.
Yes, I'm afraid I do, Clara, especially girls like Diana. But, Clara, did you know that it's been established that in 3 out of 4 cases in the congregation where young people have problems, that their parents are openly resentful of counsel and they criticise the organisation? So, is it any wonder then that if they're sowing seed like this, that they're going to reap delinquency in their children? Now, I'm not saying that Molly does all of these things, but if she's resentful of counsel, well then we have every reason to fear what's going to happen to Diana. We've had to talk to Diana a few times too. She's always ended up crying and saying she was sorry, but she never seems to change very much. As far as we know, she's never done anything to warrant disfellowshipping, but we have had to discipline her.
Well, I'm awfully glad that she had the good sense to repent anyway. And if she hasn't been disfellowshipped, well...
That's true, Clara, but it's difficult to see that her experiences have had much effect on her. Now, we're not saying that the other young people in the congregation shouldn't associate with her, but we do think you should know that young Kathy seems to be influenced by her quite a lot. You know, I'm sure that Kathy misses you, Clara. I'm sure she'd love to have you along at all the meetings again. And I know that if she did, your influence would be a good one. It'd help to counteract the bad influence that Diana may be having. Children need their parents, Clara.
Are you telling me that as if to say I didn't know it, Myron? But maybe I've gone farther downhill than you realise. How do you know that I could still help Kathy, even if I were to make the effort?
Well, Clara, suppose we let the psalmist answer that, okay? We'll read Psalm 103, verses 10 to 14. It says, "He has not done to us even according to our sins, nor according to our errors has he brought on us what we deserve. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, his loving kindness is superior toward those fearing him." Now notice what he says next, Clara. "As far off as the sunrise is from the sunset, so far off from us he has put our transgressions." You see, when Jehovah forgives, he really forgets. Then the psalmist continues, "As a father shows mercy to his sons, Jehovah has shown mercy to those fearing him. For he himself well knows the formation of us, remembering that we are dust." So think seriously about what we've said, Clara, not only because your life is at stake, but for Kathy's sake too. And Clara, I know that if you decide to come back to the Kingdom Hall, you'll have a real warm welcome waiting for you. And I'd be willing to guarantee that not one thing will be said to remind you of the serious wounds that you've received.
You still know how to put words together, Brother Shepherd.
And I mean every one of them, Clara. Believe me. But I'm going to have to run along now. I still have to...
Hello, Brother Shepherd and Brother Helper.
Hello, Tim.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you, Tim. We're just on our way out, though.
Oh, you don't need to hurry off?
Well, I'll have to be going for sure, Tim. Sarah asked me to drop by and pick up a few things from the store on the way home from magazine work, and I haven't had the opportunity yet, so I'll have to be going for sure.
Me too, Tim. I want to take the opportunity of looking over the Watchtower a little before our family study for tonight.
Well, I don't want to keep you then.
Goodbye, Clara.
Brother Shepherd, could I talk to you for just a moment before you go?
Sure, Tim.
Well, I think I'll be getting along. Goodbye, Clara.
Bye-bye, Tom.
Goodbye, Brother Helper. Brother Shepherd, what I wanted to say was that Benny came to me after the meeting last night, and he was very upset. In fact, I would say he was really a scared little boy, and, well, he had quite a story to tell me.
Is that so? What seems to be the problem, Tim?
Well, he didn't say too much about it, Brother Shepherd, but what he did say was enough to make me realise it's something that you ought to know about.
I see. Well, I'll make it a point of seeing him out after the Watchtower study tomorrow afternoon. I sure hope the poor little fellow isn't in trouble of some sort.
Well, I don't know, Brother Shepherd, but I sure hope you get a chance to talk to him.
Thank you for telling me then, Tim. I'll see him tomorrow. Goodbye, Tim.
So long.
Hello, Benny.
Hello, Brother Shepherd.
How are you this afternoon?
Okay.
Benny, have you got something that you'd like to tell me?
Did Tim tell you something?
Well, Benny, he did say that you had something on your mind, and he said he thought you'd like to talk to me about it.
Well, yes, I guess I do, Brother Shepherd. But is it all right if Tim comes along too?
Sure it is, Benny. Tim, could you come over here for a moment, please? Tim, Benny's just said that he's got something he'd like to tell me, but he'd like it if you were here as well.
Oh, you sure, Benny? Yes, Tim. I think it might be easier for me to tell Brother Shepherd now. Well, why don't you go right ahead then, Benny, and tell him exactly what you told me and anything else you think you should. Well, Brother Shepherd, I don't know what to say, but you know how it is here in the congregation. The boys kind of talk a little after the meetings, and different things come up. Sometimes they talk about this and sometimes about that.
Yes, Benny.
Well, I guess at times they talk a little wild, but I used to think they were just kind of bragging. But then a couple of weeks ago, the boys got to talking about, well, they didn't say too much to me at first, but it wasn't very long before they asked me if I wanted to go with them to an acid party.
An acid party?
Yeah, you know, drugs. You know, you take a pill and then you get high. At least that's what they kept saying, but I didn't believe them at first. I thought they were just talking. But then after, they asked me if I wanted to go with them, and of course I said no. But then they got to teasing me and to daring me, and so finally I didn't know whether they really meant it or not. So finally I thought, well, I'd go with them just to see what they were doing. Well, we went up to one of the boys' homes that evening, but his parents weren't there, and it wasn't very long before they started laughing and carrying on, and then they took some pills that they said were drugs. But I still didn't believe them. But then after, the way they were laughing and carrying on, and they kept daring me to take one of them. Well, I was a little scared. I didn't know. The way they were acting, I wasn't sure whether they were or not. But then I thought, well, maybe it wouldn't hurt me too much even if I did take one of them. And so finally, I did.
Well, that's quite an admission, Benny. But what happened?
Well, nothing at first. But it wasn't very long before I felt kind of funny. I felt kind of numb. My nose felt funny. Maybe it kind of wiggled a little bit, I don't know. But all the boys started laughing, and they kept after me and said, "Wiggle your nose some more, Benny. Go ahead, wiggle your nose." And then one of them said, "Hey, look at the long ears Benny's got. Wiggle your ears too, Benny." And then one of them said, "Benny wiggles his nose like a bunny." And they all began to say things like that. They said, "Benny's a bunny. Benny's a bunny." And then they all said, "Hop bunny, hop bunny, hop bunny." And they just kept that up until finally, I don't know what happened. I can't remember everything, but I do know that I really began to think I was a rabbit. And I remember I began to jump up and down. And after, they told me that I hopped out the room and clear out the house. And they had to run after me and grab me and bring me back. I don't know everything, and I can't remember everything. But I do know they were just laughing and carrying on and having a great time. And I was awful scared. I don't remember what happened after that, except that I felt awful sick in my stomach. And for a day or two, I just didn't feel right at all. But then, gradually, I began to remember other things that happened. I remember that all the boys began to take their pants off, and they began to play with each other. They wanted to do it to me too, but I didn't like it. They said, "What's so wrong with it? You play with yourselves, don't you? So what's so wrong if we do it to each other?" But I never did play with myself like that. I was always scared to, because my mother told me never to play with it. Well, I got even more scared because I thought, if anything happened to me like that, and I really thought I was a rabbit, well, what could happen the next time if I was to do anything like that ever again? Maybe I'd even want to do the things that the boys were doing to each other. Well, they razzed me about it for quite a few days after, and I kept feeling worse and worse until finally I told Buzz...
You mean it was Buzz who was one of the boys?
I didn't mean that. Honest, I didn't.
But it was Buzz, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, but don't tell him I said so because...
Why not, Benny?
Well, Brother Shepherd, he said he'd beat me up if I told anyone.
He did? But what makes you think he'd do it?
Well, I did see him hit a kid. It was terrible. I mean, he really hit him. He hit him 2 or 3 times, and I don't want him to treat me like that.
You mean Buzz actually beat up one of the brothers?
But, yes, he did, Brother Shepherd.
But why, Benny? Why would Buzz do that?
Well, the way Buzz was talking, it seems they'd agreed to do something to each other, something really awful. Buzz did it to this brother, and then this brother wouldn't do it to Buzz, and Buzz got mad and beat him up.
You poor kid, Benny. That's an awful thing to experience.
It certainly is, Benny. And I'd like to say that you're very courageous to tell us these things. I know how you must feel about it, Benny, but you've done exactly what was right. How else are we going to be able to help you or help the other brothers in the congregation if you don't tell us everything that you know? But, Benny, that's just another reason why masturbation or self-abuse is so bad, because it leads us to be satisfied with our own self, our own sex, and it so easily leads into homosexuality.
I know that. I feel awful bad about it. I don't want to do anything like that ever again. I don't want to see it happen to anyone else either. I know the kids at school do these things, but I think it's terrible for the brothers to do them. It makes me feel sick at my stomach just to think about it.
That's just how you should feel about it, Benny. That's the only way you'll do good for yourself and for the others in the congregation too. But, Benny, did I ever tell you about what happened to Janice and Susie Firmhold and their father?
No, Brother Shepherd.
Well, would you like to hear it?
Yes, Brother Shepherd.
Benny, here's what happened.
Eunice, did you see this item in the paper where a mother has been using her children to sell drugs?
No, I didn't, Matt. But I'm not surprised at anything these days.
Oh, I can't understand how a mother could do a thing like this. Just listen. A mother of 3 children was arraigned yesterday before Judge Michelson for allegedly spreading drugs among school children. According to the prosecution, the mother, Mrs. Marie Albright of 1416 East Linden Avenue, was using her teenage daughter and 2 younger sons to seed the schools, especially the lower classes. The prosecution charges that drugs disguised in the form of lollies were being given away by the younger boys to hoot the youngsters, so that later they could be sold the drugs. The prosecution claimed that this widespread distribution has resulted in many of the youngsters becoming addicted. This charge by the prosecution was an unexpected aspect of the case that came to light following a raid on the Albright home last Tuesday, where 108 teenagers were arrested in 2 dark and jammed rooms that police said reeked of marijuana. Mrs. Albright told the police that she knew her daughter Polly was having a party downstairs, but was unaware of any misbehavior. One detective reported that the small 2-story house was clean and neat, and the white paint seemed fresh, but all the curtains were drawn. Miss Polly Albright had told police that those invited to the party paid 40 cents, and those who came without invitation paid 50 cents. Detective Sergeant Charles Kopax, who conducted the raid, said, "When we got there, it was fantastic. The lights were out, and a record player was blaring Love Child. I can't understand how any woman with 3 children of her own could stoop so low as to deliberately go out and try to corrupt youngsters, children the same age of her own, like this. What's this world coming to? I can't understand it."
That's Albright's mother. He's in my class at school.
What did you say, Susie? Do you know these boys?
Sure, that's Tommy Albright. He's in my class at school. He gave some lollies too, but I threw them away.
Susie, I don't think I'm hearing you right. Come here a minute. Now, what was it you just said at this boy?
Sure, it's like I said. He's been giving lollies to some of the kids at school. I didn't want to take any, but he gave them to me anyway. So I just threw them away. It looked kind of funny. Some of the kids knew what it was. Like Mummy told me, I didn't eat them. I just threw them away.
Eunice, did you know about this? Did you know our children were being exposed to drugs in the schools?
Well, yes, Matt. I knew such things were going on, but I took what precautions I could by telling the children what to look out for and warning them against it. I knew Susie wouldn't take any if she knew it was the wrong thing to do.
But I think it's a disgrace that such things should be permitted in our schools. What are the schools coming to anyway? Why, it doesn't say for the children even to go to school anymore. I just can't understand it.
Now, Matt, we've spoken about these things many times before.
Yes, I know, Eunice, and you keep telling me that this is all according to Bible prophecy. But I can't see... How did you know these things are going on in the schools, Eunice?
Well, of course, I've been watching these things very closely. I love the girls. I didn't want to frighten them or put ideas into their head unnecessarily. But for a couple of years now, I've been quite concerned with the spread of marijuana, barbiturates, and other drugs. But last year, I realized something was going to have to be done as far as our children were concerned.
Why, what do you mean? What happened?
One of the boys at school gave Janice some marijuana.
Janice? But she's just a child. What on earth would Janice do with marijuana?
Lots of the kids use it. They smoke it.
Eunice, you don't mean that...
No, Matt, of course not. Janice wouldn't do a thing like that. She knows better. She's been told very firmly the bad effects of anything like that. And besides, it wouldn't be pleasing to Jehovah.
But she's just a child.
Well, Janice was 13. Lots of kids at that age are taking marijuana regularly.
Janice, come here a minute.
Oh, Daddy, what is it?
Your mother tells me that you were up with some marijuana in the school. Is that true?
Why, yes, Daddy, but, well, that was over a year ago. Why?
Well, what happened? Why did this boy offer you marijuana?
Well, lots of the kids use it. I guess he thought, well, I might want some too.
Well, what did you do?
I didn't do anything. Well, I guess I was kind of dumb. I just asked him, what is it? Well, some of the kids, they started laughing. And Miss Johnson, the teacher, well, she happened to go by just then, and she said, well, you know what it is, Janice. It's marijuana.
You mean she just said that?
Yes. So she told Jerry to put it away.
You mean she just said put it away and that's all?
Yes. She sounded kind of mad, but...
And she didn't do anything to the boy? She didn't take him away from him or take him to the principal's office or anything?
Oh, no. Well, there's too much of it around the schools for that, Dad. Well, kids throw pills back and forth in the cafeteria just like nothing.
Well, I think something ought to be done about it.
That's nothing, Daddy. Did you hear what happened in Susie's class today?
No, what happened, Susie?
I got home early because all the junkies are sick.
The who?
The junkies. You know, the kids taking drugs. Since Tommy's mother was arrested, they couldn't get any more lollies. So they all got sick. And they're vomiting all over the classroom. So the teacher sent us all home.
Well, I think it's disgraceful that such things should be permitted in our schools. Why, it isn't safe for the children even to go to school anymore. I just can't understand it.
Now, Matt, it's no use getting excited about it. I suppose most of the parents know what's going on. But many of them take it themselves. And those that don't apparently don't care. Look, I believe the schools are trying a different program to ease the situation. But so far, I haven't seen any difference.
Well, I've seen items in the newspapers from time to time about narcotics in the schools, but nothing like this. I had no idea.
Oh, the schools are pretty bad, Matt. Look, I worry about our girls every day. But our girls, they're good girls. They know what's right, and I trust them. They've given me every reason to.
The kids pass around a lot of bad pictures too, but we never look at them.
What do you mean, bad pictures?
Oh, you know. Pictures of people without clothes on and stuff like that.
Susie, what are you talking about?
Oh, you know, Matt. Pornographic pictures.
You mean that stuff is being passed in the schools too?
Sure, Dad. Lots of the kids have it. Or some of them even sell the stuff in the schools.
My art teacher doesn't think it's so bad, but I do.
You mean your art teacher condones that kind of stuff?
Susie isn't taking art anymore. Mum had a class changed.
Yes, you know, Mr. Johnson, he belongs to that religion, sexology. You know, the ones that are so active in sex education in the schools here. They have their own publications, and they get around the laws on distributing pornographic literature by sending it to their own members.
Well, the teacher of sex education in Susie's school told the kids that are studying sex education that masturbation and fornication are permissible.
At their age! But how about you? How do you manage in the midst of all this?
Oh, well, they know how we feel about it, so most of them don't bother us much.
How do you feel about it, Janice?
Well, Mum's always taught us from the Bible
that we should conduct ourselves like Christians. Jesus wouldn't have taken drugs or smoked marijuana, and he certainly wouldn't be interested in the filthy pictures and the literature that these kids pass around. So Susie and I, we don't want to fill our minds with that sort of thing. We don't want to contaminate our bodies either with anything that would hurt us like that.
Well, I knew things were bad when I was in school, but it was nothing like this.
But you know, Daddy, that we're living in the last days, and the Bible says that things are going to continue to get worse.
You really believe that, don't you, Janet?
Of course. It's in the Bible. I don't like the way the kids are. All they talk and joke about is sex and their sex organs. It's almost like sex worship. So many of them, they're mixed up in fornication or homosexual practices. Or sometimes I get kind of scared. But I know that Jehovah is protecting us. I just don't want to do anything that might make him not protect me anymore. Because when I think of living the way some of these kids do, well, without Jehovah to look after them, well, it's no wonder they get into the mess they do sometimes.
Well, I don't know, Eunice. I had no idea that things are as difficult as they are for our children. It seems to me that maybe I should pay more attention to what's going on. Maybe I should take more of an interest in things myself. I think I've known for a long time that what you've been telling me about the last days is true. I guess I just never really wanted to face up to it. But now that I can see how seriously it involves my family and how dangerous it is for them just to live what we used to call a normal life, well, I don't know. It looks to me like maybe you found the only worthwhile protection, and maybe it's time I started doing something about it too.
You mean you could have a Bible study, Daddy?
Well, I guess that's what I mean, all right. Do you think you could teach your daddy a few things, Susie?
Sure, but Mama can teach you a lot more.
Now, Susie, if your father really wants to study the Bible, I suggest we get one of the brothers in the congregation to take care of it. But of course, that's up to you, Matt.
So you see, Benny, the integrity of these two girls in listening to their mother's fine counsel, it not only kept them out of trouble, but did you see what it did for their father?
Well, Brother Firmhold comes to the meetings all the time now, doesn't he?
Yes, he does, Benny. He's been coming along regularly for over 6 months. He's having a fine study. You study with him, Tim. How's he going?
Yes, I do, Brother Shepherd. He's doing very well too. He's so proud of his girls, and he's got a right to be too. They're two fine girls. He says he has to study hard to keep up with them, but he's learning very rapidly, and I'm sure he'll make a fine brother.
But Benny, are you sure there isn't something else that you should tell us? Are you sure there isn't something else about Buzz that we should know?
Well, no, Brother Shepherd. What do you mean? What else is there that I could tell?
I don't know, Benny, but I kind of feel that you're holding something back.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I ought to tell you.
Well, Benny, if there's anything at all that we should know, then please do.
Well, the other night, Buzz came to the meeting, and he was even acting more cocky than usual, and he was bragging around a little, and then finally came up to me and said, "Do you want to see something?" And I said, well, what are you talking about, Buzz? And then he said, well, come over in the corner here and I'll show you. So he took me over to a corner in the Kingdom Hall, and he asked me to look in his jacket pocket, and he had a gun.
A gun? Are you sure, Benny?
Yes, Brother Shepherd. He had it in his jacket pocket.
Benny, are you sure it was a real gun? Would you know a real gun if you saw it?
Sure it was a real gun. I saw it. He wouldn't take it all the way out of his pocket, but I saw it all right, and I know.
What did he say about it, Benny? Did he say why he had it, or where he got it, or so on?
No, he just said that he borrowed it, but he patted his pocket like he really thought he had something. I was awful scared. I didn't want to speak to him about anything after that.
It sounds serious, all right, Benny. And you can be sure that we're going to look into this matter of homosexual practice too. So, Benny, don't you worry about a thing.
But what'll I do, Brother Shepherd?
Well, Benny, you just act as if nothing's happened. there's no need for us to say anything to Buzz about you and about what you've told us, so just keep out of his way for a few days until we've had a chance to get together and just see what it's all about. I'm sure you'll be okay. I'm sure nothing will happen to you.
Well, thank you, Brother Shepherd. Can I go now?
Yes, run along, Benny, and I hope you can see now why it's so important to report anything like what happened to you.
Yes, Brother Shepherd.
I know Jehovah will be pleased with you, Benny, because it was a courageous thing for you to do.
Well, thank you, Brother Shepherd. My Brother Shepherd, I had no idea that anything like this would develop. I'm sure glad I told Benny to talk to you.
I am too, Tim. You can never possibly foresee what's going to happen when something like this gets started. I sure hope that this is all we're going to find out. Young Benny indicated that Buzz was the only boy in our congregation that was involved. I sure hope so. But if I find out who those other boys were, well then I'll certainly have to speak to their overseers about it so that they can take some action. But Tim, in the meantime, I think it'd be better if you don't say anything about this to anyone, okay? And I'll meet with the other brothers on the committee immediately, and we'll take whatever action is necessary before it can cause any more harm in the congregation. But Tim, in the meanwhile, I think young Benny's going to need some help. I'd hate to see anything happen to him. He's a fine boy.
Yes, he's a good kid, isn't he? He's certainly conscientious, especially with his parents not being in the truth. But he's coming over to my place tomorrow night, Brother Shepherd. He has an assignment in the Theocratic Ministry School, and I promised to go through some of the points with him.
Oh, that's good, Tim. That'll probably help him get over this fright a little. Tim, will you say hello to your mother for me too, please?
I certainly will, Brother Shepherd. Good night.
Good night, Tim.
What was the most important thing you learned, Benny, in this experience with Buzz?
Well, I don't know. I guess that I shouldn't listen to someone when I know that he's wrong.
That's good, Benny. You should never be afraid to refuse to take a dare. Benny, who does the Bible say is the author of temptation?
Well, Satan.
Well, does Jehovah tempt anyone?
No, I guess not.
Then whose children are those that dare someone to do something that's wrong?
Well, that makes them Satan's children, doesn't it?
That's right. They're certainly not doing Jehovah's will when they do it, so why should we listen to them?
Well, I'm certainly not going to listen to Buzz anymore. But, Tim, my parents don't warn me about these things, like Sister Firmhole did Janice and Susie.
But remember, Benny, your parents aren't in the truth. So I guess there are many things they don't realise you have to do to be a Christian, but you do have the organisation, don't you? And you attend the Watchtower meeting every week. Benny, what do you think would happen if you were to do everything the Watchtower tells you to do?
Well, I guess I wouldn't get into any trouble then, would I?
Well, the chances are very much against it. You see, Benny, the Watchtower is published by Jehovah's Anointed, the faithful and discreet slave, and they're instructed by Jehovah, so their counsel is wise. And even if your parents were in the truth, where would they get the counsel they'd give you?
Well, from the Watchtower, huh?
That's right, and the Bible. Besides, there are older brothers in the congregation like Brother Shepherd and Brother Helper. You can always go to them if you're not sure. But Benny, whatever you do, don't listen to someone who isn't mature himself. Remember the words of Jesus? If a blind man guides a blind man, both will fall into the pit. We're still young, and we have to realise that we need some direction. And if our parents don't give it to us, we should realise that...
Tim, I just heard the awfulest thing about Buzz. Hi, Benny. It came on the radio. The newsman mentioned Buzz by name. He called him Harold Sawyer. And do you know what? He held up a service station.
What? Buzz did that? When?
Just a little while ago, I guess. The newsman said that the station down on Franklin and High was just closing up when Buzz went in and held the man up at the point of a gun. But an off-duty policeman had just driven into the station to get some petrol. He thought the station was still open, and he got suspicious. And when he realised what Buzz was doing, he pulled his own gun and made Buzz drop his. Well, they arrested him and took him down to the station. The newsman said that he was high on drugs. They found a hypodermic needle and heroin on him. Can you imagine that?
Heroin? Then Buzz was in a worse condition than we thought, wasn't he?
Boy, I'm glad I wasn't with him. But you know, Tim, Buzz must have actually been stealing right along, because he used to show me things like one time a transistor radio and another time a wristwatch. And he said he stole them, but I just thought he was bragging. What do you think they'll do to him, Tim?
It's hard to say what the police will do, Benny, but it's pretty certain what the congregation committee will have to do. But you know, Benny, this just emphasises what I was going to say when Kathy came in. It's in Proverbs 29 and verse 15. And it says, "The rod and reproof are what give wisdom, but a boy let on the loose will be causing his mother shame." So, Benny, don't ever think that you can get away from discipline. If you do, then you're certain to end up in trouble, just like Buzz did.
Well, I sure do appreciate your help, Tim, and thanks too with your help with my student talk. I feel awful sorry about Buzz, but I sure feel relieved now. I guess he won't go to bother me anymore, will he?
Well, no, Benny, he won't be able to bother you anymore, but don't ever forget the lesson that you've learned.
Don't worry, Tim, I won't. I'll never forget it ever. But I think I better be going now. So long, Kathy.
See you, Benny.
Take care now, Benny, and have a good evening. Well, didn't you say the police reported that he was high on drugs?
Yes, but I mean, why would he even take drugs to begin with?
Well, Kathy, he certainly knows it's wrong, but why do people do things that are wrong?
But Tim, don't you think that sometimes we get so frustrated at being told so many times what to do and what not to do? Look, after a while you almost begin to resent it.
You're not blaming his trouble on the servants for trying to correct him, are you?
No, but...
Let me ask you something, Kathy. Is something wrong only once, or is it wrong every time you do it?
Well, it's wrong every time.
Then, if someone corrects you every time, who's in the wrong?
I am, or whoever's doing what's wrong.
It makes sense, doesn't it? So if you don't want to be corrected every time, well, what's the best way to avoid it?
Well, just quit doing what's wrong, I guess.
Now, that's not hard to understand, is it?
No, but it sure is hard to do.
I know it is, Kathy. Believe me. We're young, and that's just one of the problems of being young. But now, I told you I wanted to talk to you tonight about this, so I've looked up some scriptures that I want you to read. But first, Kathy, let me ask you this. You believe the Bible, don't you?
Oh, of course I do, Tim. You know that.
Yes, but I want you to see what it really means to believe the Bible. Now, here's your Bible. I want you to read Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 15.
All right. It says, "Foolishness is tied up with the heart of a boy. The rod of discipline is what will remove it far from him."
Now, you said you believe the Bible. What does this say about a young person?
Well, it says that foolishness is tied up with his heart.
Do you believe that? You willing to admit that the first and strongest inclination of a young person is to do foolish things, to act immaturely?
I guess I have to, don't I? That's what the Bible says.
And, Kathy, what does the Bible say will help you overcome that foolishness?
Well, it says the rod of discipline.
Then do you think you ought to be frustrated when you receive counsel?
No, I guess not.
Kathy, one of the first things you have to learn as a young person is that you need counsel. You just have to admit that you can't get along without it. And don't think that you shouldn't receive it either. If you do, you're denying the truth of the Bible. Do you think you're smart enough to do that? Do you think you're smart enough to get along without the Bible or its discipline? Some young folks think they know more than their parents. They think they know more than the servants in the congregation. They think they know more than even the Watchtower. But, Kathy, what does the Bible say?
That foolishness is tied up with the heart of a boy. But it sure seems like young people get the worst of it.
Oh, I don't think so. Read Matthew chapter 19 and verse 14.
Okay. It says, "Jesus, however, said, 'Let the young children alone, and stop hindering them from coming to me. For the kingdom of the heavens belongs to such like ones.'"
Now, who does Jesus say that the kingdom of the heavens belongs to?
To such like ones. I guess he means young children, huh?
Well, does that mean that the kingdom belongs to literal children?
No, he says to such like ones. He means it belongs to those like children.
Because they're immature, do you think?
No, it couldn't mean that.
Then what did we just learn that children need?
Counsel, the rod of correction.
That's right. So then, who are those that are going to inherit the kingdom?
Oh, you mean those who are willing to receive counsel and discipline, like children need?
Exactly. So you see, Kathy, it isn't just young people in years that receive counsel. Adults must receive counsel too, because if they don't, they'll never get into the kingdom either. And Kathy, it's just as difficult for adults to take counsel as it is for young people. Sometimes even more so. Now, look at Diana's mother, Kathy. You know what she said when Brother Shepherd tried to talk to her about Diana. She said she just wasn't going to pay any attention to what Brother Shepherd said. You see, Kathy, Diana's mother thinks she's a very mature woman. But you see, in some ways she really isn't.
Yes, but Tim, she's a grown woman.
That's true. But that alone doesn't make her mature. Here, read Proverbs chapter 20 and verse 11.
Okay, Tim, I will.
Now, remember these scriptures you're reading because you must take them seriously if you claim to believe the Bible.
It says in verse 11, even by his practices, a boy makes himself recognized as to whether his activity is pure and upright.
Now, how does this say that even a boy can show himself to be pure and upright?
Well, it says by his practices. Well, I guess by the things that he does.
That's right. Now, what practices of Diana would you say recommend her to be pure and upright?
Well, I don't know whether she does anything really bad.
But, Kathy, is that in itself a recommendation for maturity, just not doing anything? That isn't what Paul says in his letter to Timothy. It's 1 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 12. I was talking to Buzz about this just the other night when he was complaining because he couldn't get on the service meeting. Would you like to read it, please, Kathy?
All right. Let no man ever look down on your youth. On the contrary, become an example to the faithful ones in speaking, in conduct, in love, in faith, in chasteness.
Now, what does Paul tell Timothy is a way that he can show he isn't really young?
Well, he says to be an example in all these things.
That's right. Now, do you think that Buzz was an example in speech or conduct?
No, I guess not.
Then, Kathy, if anyone looked down on him because he was a young man, they'd have a right to, wouldn't they? Not just because he was young in years, but because he acted like someone young in years.
I guess so, but Tim, older people just don't look at things the same way that we do.
Of course not. That's because they're older. But, Kathy, when we don't agree, who's probably right?
Well, I don't see why we always have to be wrong.
You're forgetting Proverbs 22:15 already. What does it say about the heart of a young boy?
That foolishness is tied up with it. But, Tim, can't we ever be right?
Of course, Kathy. When you act like a grown-up, like a mature person, that view is the only one that's ever right.
Yes, but suppose parents don't set the right examples themselves. Well, like Buzz and Diana's folks. Now, Diana's mother lets her do almost anything, whereas Buzz's folks are overly protective. How can you blame Diana or Buzz?
Well, Kathy, that does make it more difficult for them, all right. But then, children can't absolve themselves of all responsibility. Well, look at Benny. His parents aren't in the truth, but Benny doesn't think he knows it all. He's willing to listen. And after all, if young people can read the Watchtower, they can see for themselves what they're supposed to do. Now, the mature thing for them to do is to apply it to themselves, not wait for their parents to require them to do it. When they don't apply it to themselves, they're only proving that they're immature, that they need discipline. Kathy, what do we say about an older person that doesn't apply the counsel in the Watchtower?
Well, we say that he's immature. Sometimes even the servants have to get after him.
Exactly. So it's the same thing, isn't it? Maturity means making straight paths for our own feet, not waiting to be required to do it. Accepting counsel and discipline on our own recognition. Like Paul said there, being an example in it. And Kathy, Paul says that young people can do that too. But now, what do you think about your speech and your conduct towards your mother the other night?
Well, I guess I wasn't a very good example, was I? But, Tim, it's so hard doing things this way.
Of course it is, Kathy, but it goes back to the same thing. Foolishness is tied up in the heart of a boy. Well, in your case, a girl. It's normal for young people to do things that are wrong, to make mistakes. But many of us just don't want to admit it. You know, Kathy, one of the most difficult lessons we young people have to learn is that we just don't know everything, that we have a lot to learn. And the funny thing is that when a young person does begin to realise this and begins to listen and take discipline to heart, well, he just isn't young anymore. Oh, he still is in years maybe, but he's already becoming mature. No, Kathy, if we're going to act like children, then we have to realise that we can expect to be treated like children. But Paul says that we can be examples in love too. Now, you want to be a mature young woman. You want to be recognised as such. Do you think your attitude the other night showed love towards your mother?
Well, I guess it isn't showing love when I'm resentful of Mother, is it?
And, Kathy, what about Brother Shepherd?
Well, I guess if I were loving, I wouldn't resent his counsel either. But how can I be an example of love, Tim?
You have to keep trying, Kathy. Try being kind to Mother. And why not make it a point to go up and talk to Brother Shepherd too? Why wait for him to come to you all the time? Wouldn't it be loving to encourage him sometimes? You know he has a hard job to do, and if you were to thank him for the fine service meeting he prepared for us, or the counsel he gives at the conclusion of the meeting, don't you think he'd appreciate that?
Yes, Tim. I guess we show love too by helping others, don't we? Especially other young ones like ourselves to stand up for the organisation. Maybe when I heard Buzz and Diana talking the way they did the other night, I shouldn't have sympathised with them or even agreed with them. Maybe I should have disagreed with them and showed them where they are wrong. Would that be showing love, Tim?
It certainly would, Kathy. It might not be easy, especially at first, but then growing up isn't easy. But Kathy, do you think that either Buzz or Diana are examples in speech or conduct or love in the way that they've been acting at the Kingdom Hall?
Oh, no, I guess not.
Then, so far, we haven't found much reason why they deserve to be copied. But then, Paul says we should be examples in faith too. Now, what do you think... Oh, Kathy, would you see who's at the door, please?
Okay, Tim.
How about it, Kathy? Is our date still on?
Oh, I don't know, Diana.
Oh, come on, Kathy, what is?
Oh, all right, I guess so.
That's better.
Well, how's my big brother today? The guardian of all us young people's morals.
Hello, Diana. Now, what's that supposed to mean, Diana?
Oh, come on, Tim. Don't be so naive. Doesn't that give you even the least little bit of a tingle?
I'm not impressed one bit, Diana.
You mean Kathy never rumples your hair? I'm supposed to be your sister, aren't I? Isn't that what you always say to me, Timothy? Quote 3 Timothy 1:1.
You're a little off in your scripture citation, Diana. It's 1 Timothy, and it's chapter 5, verse 2. Here, let's read it. I'll read both verses 1 and 2. Do not severely criticize an older man. To the contrary, entreat him as a father, younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, younger women as sisters, with all chasteness. Diana, do you know what that word chasteness means?
Oh, Timothy, of course I do.
Diana, are you trying to make it difficult for the brothers to treat you like a sister?
Look, why is it that you always keep putting me down? It doesn't seem to make any difference what I say or do. Everybody always has something to say about it. It's either the way I speak or it's the way I dress. I get so tired of hearing about my clothes all the time. Now, Timmy, be frank with me. Do you really think that my dress is too short?
What is short, Diana? Maybe I could best answer your question by telling you a little experience. Now, this is something that happened in South America. Just listen to it.
Is this where we apply for cafeteria service?
Yes, it is. Have you girls had experience in the cafeteria before?
Yes, we've both worked on the serving line at several assemblies. Our circuit assembly, too.
Well, that's fine. Let's see now. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I can't accept you for service.
But why not? We both know what to do.
It isn't that, girls. But the assembly servant said that we couldn't accept any girl that isn't properly dressed.
What do you mean, not properly dressed? Aren't we dressed all right? We don't mind wearing these clothes. Besides, we never get too dirty in the cafeteria line.
No, it isn't that.
But look, we have our little aprons. We can put these on.
You don't understand, girls. It's your skirts.
Our skirts? What do you mean? What's wrong with our skirts?
But can't you see how short they are? The assembly servant said that if any girl came to our department wearing skirts as short as that, we couldn't accept them for service.
But why not? What's wrong with our skirts? We wear these to the Kingdom Hall.
But don't you see, sisters, that's just it. The Watchtowers had a lot to say on how we should dress and why. And the congregation servants, too, have been trying to help all the young people understand that we have a standard to uphold in the New World Society, but some youngsters just aren't listening. Now, you girls aren't new in the truth. You said yourselves served at several assemblies. So the assembly servant said that if any girl came to our department who didn't appreciate the counsel received through the Watchtower, then we're not to assign her to any job.
But we want to serve Jehovah. We came to the assembly to work. We always work. Why can't we do what we've always done?
I understand how you feel, sister, and I sympathise with you too, but working at the convention is an added privilege of service. Jehovah allows us to serve him because he has the work to do, but he doesn't need us. And if we don't appreciate the counsel he gives through his publications, through the Watchtower or through the Kingdom Ministry, then why should we be allowed to have extra privileges of service?
But we do appreciate his counsel, and we want to do what's right.
I'm glad you do, and you both look like very fine little sisters, and I wish you could serve here in the cafeteria. But you must admit that your dresses are much shorter than the ones our mature sisters at the assembly are wearing.
But what are we going to do? These are the only clothes that we brought to the assembly. We want to serve Jehovah in the cafeteria.
I'm very sorry, sister, but you should have thought of that before you came to the assembly. You know that the Watchtower has told us how we should dress when we come to assemblies. It's told us how we should dress in the Kingdom Hall. Now, if you want Jehovah's organization to recognize you as a mature person, one who's really qualified to serve in a position of responsibility, then you have to show that you're one who accepts counsel. You have to show that you're one who listens and who believes what you're told, and who shows that you really respect Jehovah's organization because you want to do things the way that the society says things should be done.
Oh, what are we going to do? I was counting on serving the cafeteria. I always serve in the cafeteria. Hey, I've got an idea. Come here, quick. What do you mean? Well, look, the only reason we're not allowed to serve in the cafeteria is because our skirts are too short, right? Why don't we let them down? Oh, what do you mean? How can we do that here? We haven't got anything to work with. Oh, come on. I'll show you what we can do. My mother showed me how to sew, so let's go over to the ladies' room over here, and I'll show you what we can do. You see this hem is sewn here with this stitch. All you have to do is find the right thread and pull, and the whole thing comes unravelled. Oh, I don't see what you mean. How can you do that? Here, let me show you. You see this little loop here? All you have to do is break that and pull. And look. See? My skirt's clear down to my knees now. Hey! Quickly, show me how to do mine too. Okay. My, am I glad your mother showed you how to let your hem down like that. See, brother? Our skirt's along now. Now, can we serve in the cafeteria?
Well, that is something. You girls must certainly want to serve Jehovah, don't you? Well, anybody that's that anxious to please Jehovah, I wouldn't want to hold you back. Sure, here's your volunteer service applications. Fill those out, and I'll put you to work right away.
Well, Timothy, that's very sweet. What are you trying to prove?
Do you think it was the short dresses that made them unacceptable, Diana? What do you think the brothers there were really concerned with?
Why don't you tell me, Tim? It's your lesson.
All right. It wasn't only their short dresses that made them unacceptable, Diana. It was their disregard of counsel. Well, they may have been well-meaning, but the fact remains they weren't following the counsel in the Watchtower. It showed a lack of appreciation for them to do that. That's why the brothers were concerned and made that restriction.
Do you think I resent counsel, Tim?
Well, Diana, would you have done what those girls did?
And spoil a good dress? Please, Timothy. Oh, Diana, you know you would. You could always raise the hem again. Timothy, I think that your little sister here is missing the point of your story. Now, you intimated that wearing their skirts that short was an indication that they weren't accepting counsel, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, Kathy, if they put their hems back up again in the same way, it shows that they didn't really learn the lesson, did they? Oh, So you think I need correction, is that right, Brother Timothy?
I think that you're the best one to answer that, Diana. Counsel is given for those that really want it, who realise that they need to be helped. Kathy, would you bring me that February 15th Watchtower for a minute, please? Now, Diana, you raised this matter of short dresses yourself, so let's use short dresses as an example. But remember, there are a lot of other things that could illustrate this point just as well. But first, Diana, let me ask you, why is it that you wear your dresses short?
Well, I like them that way, and that very Watchtower that you have there says that I can choose my own style of dress if I want to. Here, let me show you, Mr. Timothy. Here it is, page 114, the 7th paragraph. Today's style of dress is largely a matter of personal taste, and tastes and customs vary throughout the world. So you see, the Watchtower itself says that I can wear what I want to, and I don't know why I should be criticised all the time.
Yes, Diana, the Watchtower does say that, of course. But did you read the next two sentences? Here, listen. But for the dedicated Christian, personal preference should not be the only determining factor. Consideration must also be given to how that choice will affect one's ministry, others inside and outside the congregation, and one's own thinking and viewpoints. Then the Watchtower goes on to say that what one person may call extreme may appear conservative to another. But then over here on paragraph 15, it goes on to say, how do we know to what extremes the customs and fashions of this system of things will go before the end? How far can we go along with them without compromising principles of Christian decency and good taste? We must start setting our own pattern of thinking right, so that we will not go beyond the standard set in the Scriptures. It is like a man at an auction. If he does not set a ceiling on his bidding, he will go bankrupt. We must start setting a ceiling on our view of the customs and practices of this system of things. Without a proper guard, spiritual bankruptcy is almost a certainty. But then, Diana, it says, if your style of dress is so different from that of those who are mature in the New World society that it is a constant cause for comment, think seriously of what it is doing to your ministry and those outside the organisation who are observing you. Why persist in marking yourself? Is what you think you are gaining really worth it?
Oh, Timothy, I know what it says. I've read it.
Yes, Diana, and you were in the congregation meeting when we studied it, weren't you?
Yes, so what?
Well, you just said yourself that your dress is constantly a cause for comment. So it's obvious that you're marking yourself as different from everybody else in the congregation. Now, according to what we've just read, you must think that what you're gaining is worth it. Now, Diana, I'm curious. What is it that you're actually gaining?
Oh, Timothy, you ought to be a lawyer. You can ask the most ridiculous questions. Honest, Diana, I'm curious too. I'd like to know. Oh, my, you two are the ones. I had no idea I was going to get the 3rd degree. You'd think someone your own age would be a little more understanding, a little more sympathetic.
Diana, I think we make a big mistake when we keep talking about differences in ages. Young people should be no different from old people when it comes to Christian conduct. Now, just a moment ago, you raised the point about being like brothers and sisters in the congregation. Well, you know, just a few verses ahead of Paul's counsel on that point, at 1 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 12, Paul tells Timothy how to avoid being looked down on because of his youth. Now, Kathy, we were just discussing that point together. What was Paul's argument here?
Well, Paul was telling Timothy that if he'd make himself an example of how a mature Christian should be, well, then no one would look down on him just because he was young in years.
That's right. So, Diana, can we hear counsel, especially from the faithful and discreet slave, through the Watchtower, and then completely ignore it, and still say we're being an example in faith?
It's almost like sinning against the Holy Spirit, isn't it?
Well, failing to follow counsel in something as personal as dress might not be quite that serious, but it can certainly lead to it, because if we fail to get the sense of the argument and we persist in resisting the organisation and refuse to conform to what God directs us to do through his channel, we can certainly harden ourselves to the point that we are sinning against the Holy Spirit.
Oh, Diana, you wouldn't want to do anything like that, would you?
How do you know that I haven't already? Well, I've got to rush. See you in church.
Diana, I don't think I'd better go on that date after all.
Suit yourself, Kathy doll. I'll not pine away. See ya.
Oh, Tim, I'm awfully sorry about the way Diana acted. I just don't know what's got into her.
Oh, Kathy, I don't think she's any different from what she always has been.
Well, maybe I just see her a little differently then. I don't know. But, Tim, there's something I think I ought to tell you.
Oh, what's that, Kathy?
Well, last Friday night, I agreed to go on a double date with Diana. I know you said I shouldn't go on dates, Tim, but, well, she said we'd just be going to a movie with a couple of brothers from another congregation. Well, so I thought maybe it wouldn't be too bad. I know I shouldn't have done it, and I feel awfully bad about it now. Only I just told her then that I wouldn't go with her.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, Kathy. I knew, of course, that you'd made the date.
You did? How did you know that?
Well, remember, Kathy, I'm your big brother. I'm interested in things that you do because, well, I certainly don't want to see you get into any kind of trouble. I was just waiting to see if you intended to go through with it before I brought it up myself. But you know, Kathy, there's something else I'd like to recommend before we finish our little talk.
Oh, what's that, Tim?
It's something the Apostle Peter wrote in 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 21. Would you read it, Kathy?
Yes, all right. In fact, to this course you were called, because even Christ suffered for you, leaving you a model for you to follow his steps closely.
Now, Kathy, how would you say that scripture ties in with our discussion?
Well, I guess we should try to follow Jesus as an example.
That's right. So, before you ever do anything that's questionable, always ask yourself, well, would Jesus do this? And if you're really honest with yourself, you won't be very far from right in what you do.
My, I guess I sure haven't been doing that, have I?
But you know, Kathy, both of us learned a great deal from our own parents. Well, Dad and Mum began to study when I did, and being older, they did advance far in the truth. And even though Father neglected to keep the truth, we should never forget that the counsel our parents gave us was good counsel.
That's kind of hard to think of, though.
Well, think of the case of Solomon, then. He was one of the wisest men that ever lived, apart from Jesus, of course. But he forsook his own counsel. But that certainly doesn't change the wisdom of what he said, does it?
No, that's right. We still read what he says in the book of Proverbs and in Ecclesiastes.
Well, I certainly hope that Mother will realise what's happening to her and she'll be able to get back before it's too late.
Oh, yes. Tim, I remember how kind Mother used to be. She never used to speak to us in the way that she does here lately. Oh, look, it makes me even angrier at Father than anything else for doing this to her.
Yes, that's true, Kathy. But regardless of what Mother has suffered from it, if she loses out over it, it still won't be Father's fault. It'll be her own. Nobody really takes us out of the truth except ourselves. I'll get it.
Hello? Tim, I have some information that I think you should know about. I wouldn't say anything to you at this point, but it involves Kathy.
Oh, is that so? What is it?
We've just learned that a married brother in another congregation has confessed to immoral relations, and he's implicated beyond any question of doubt a young sister in our own congregation.
But, Brother Shepherd, you mentioned Kathy.
Oh, Tim, I'm sorry, I certainly didn't mean her, but I did overhear Kathy last Friday making a double date with this young sister, and, well, I wanted to caution you so that Kathy wouldn't get involved in something. The committee's going to meet immediately and take whatever action is necessary, but in the meantime, since Kathy couldn't know about this, she might go ahead and, well, at the very least, have an unpleasant experience.
You mean it's Diana?
That's right, Tim.
Well, I certainly thank you for calling, Brother Shepherd. Kathy's told me about it, and she's already called it off.
Oh, I'm sure glad to hear that. But I guess I really should have known. I've never seen anything about Kathy that wouldn't recommend her. And I appreciate, too, Tim, the help that you've been giving her.
Ah, she's a good kid, Brother Shepherd.
Well, I'm glad everything's taken care of, Tim. We'll have to announce to the congregation what our findings are in due time.
Yes, it's too bad. Very sorry to hear it. Well, we'll see you Friday, Brother Shepherd.
Sure thing, Tim. Goodbye.
Bye. So that's what Diana meant when she said, "How do you know I haven't already sinned against the Holy Spirit?"
That was about Diane, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. She's in very serious trouble.
I knew it. The minute she walked out of here and said what she did, there's something bad about that girl. You heard her, Mother? I have to apologize, Kathy. And Tim. Or maybe I should say I have to thank you. I've been listening in the other room for some time now. I heard Kathy come in and start talking about Buzz.
And I've been seriously thinking about some of the things that Brother Shepherd said to me when he came to see me last Saturday. I can't put some of the things out of my mind. And when I heard you two talking just now, I only wished that I'd listened to Brother Shepherd sooner. When I realised what I've almost lost, when I realised what you two youngsters have been through and proved yourself despite all that's happened, I realised that I'm one of those young people you were talking about, Timothy. But I don't want to be foolish and faint-hearted anymore. I want to be an example too. I want to try to get back, but you're both going to have to help me. No more hitting the whiskey bottle for me. And Timothy, you certainly have been an example to me in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in chasteness. You're not a boy anymore, Tim. You're a grown man. And I hope that when I can resume my responsibilities with Kathy, you'll be able to go to Bethel too. Oh, Mother, what a wonderful thing to say.
Thank you, Mother.
It is life. But painful as the process may be at times, brothers and sisters, it's most rewarding. Only the one who is mature can fully appreciate it. But you young folks in the New World Society, you don't need to wait till you're old in years to enter this state of Christian maturity. Many of you, like young Timothy, are already enjoying it, and many of you, like little Kathy, are beginning to taste of it. But if you or your parents see any tendencies in you that even suggest Buzz or Diana, take serious warning. We can't toy with immorality in any form and not eventually fall into sin. The pressures of this system's corrupt standard are too great to resist if we incline at all in that direction. Brothers, what you've just seen in the last couple of hours only suggests the problems our young people face. The raw details are too shocking to portray. But parents, look, don't minimize the corruption of this present evil system. What the Apostle Paul wrote to the Romans applies in every detail today. At Romans chapter 1, beginning with verse 36, he says, "That's why God gave them up to disgraceful sexual appetites. For both their females changed the natural use of themselves into one contrary to nature. And likewise even the males left the natural use of the female and became violently inflamed in their lust toward one another, males with males, working what is obscene and receiving in themselves the full recompense which was due for their error. And just as they did not approve of holding God in accurate knowledge, God gave them up to a disapproved mental state to do the things not fitting, filled as they were with all unrighteousness, wickedness, covetousness, injuriousness, being full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malicious disposition, being whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, insolent, haughty, self-assuming, inventors of injurious things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, false to agreements, having no natural affection, merciless. Although these know full well the righteous decree of God, that those practicing such things are deserving of death, they not only keep on doing them, but also approve of those practicing them." Brothers and sisters, this is the world in which we live, a system that's sowing the seeds of rebellion and immorality and reaping a bumper crop of moral and spiritual delinquents. And this sowing of seeds, brothers, is not just by chance. Let them fall where they may. A deliberate campaign is underway to undermine the youth and destroy any moral stability that might yet remain. I'd like to read you from a confidential report, brothers, on some causes of student revolt in our schools, and this is what it says. "Another aspect of contemporary campus scenes is a continual outpouring of pornography and literature preoccupied with sex. It must immediately be emphasized that this is not normal or fraternity boy sex. In the main, it's concerned with perversions and unnatural sex acts. This is no accident. The connection between sex perversions and revolution has a long history, the quotation goes on to say. Elite members of the Nazi SS were introduced to abnormal sexual activities as a part of the conditioning process to break down their attachment to all traditional moral values. C.S. Lewis's novel, That Hideous Strength, shows a young intellectual being introduced to revolting practices by the agents of evil precisely because once he's been accustomed to accept the unnatural and monstrous, then no order or request from his masters will be refused. The quote goes on to say, it should occasion little surprise then that the same persons who are leaders of revolutionary activities on campus also endorse one of the most blatant writers of perverted obscenity as a candidate for student body president and demonstrated in favor of displaying obscene statuary. End of quote. Look, brothers, don't hide your faces from the stark reality that your child too is subject to these same temptations, these same planned, deliberate attempts by Satan and his system to corrupt them and turn them away from the righteousness of Jehovah. The saddest words, brothers, the saddest words are those of the parent who says, after his child has been disfellowshipped, maybe we should have paid more attention when he said he might have difficulty someday. Don't wait for your child to make a serious mistake before you realize that young people need help, brothers. Your help. Your children are your responsibility. Jehovah has directly placed that responsibility on your shoulders. If you don't help them, if you don't set them an upbuilding example, if you fail to recognize in them the early symptoms of delinquency and correct them, then if they turn aside from Jehovah's righteous standards, no one can take that responsibility away from you. And even if they are snatched out of the fire by some concerned servant in the congregation or another young minister of their own age, this doesn't remove from before Jehovah your own responsibility in the matter. These words may sound harsh, brothers, but remember Jehovah's words in Ezekiel's prophetic vision of the man with the recorder's inkhorn and the 6 men with weapons for smashing in their hands? That's the one in Ezekiel, chapter 9 and verses 5 and 6. Remember, after the man with the inkhorn had gone through the city and put a mark in the forehead of anyone sighing and crying, Jehovah said to the men with smashing weapons, pass through the city after him and strike. Let not your eye feel sorry, and don't feel any compassion. Old man, young man, virgin, and little child, and women you should kill off to a ruination. So, brothers, your children must bear the mark of Christian identity the same as you. And if they don't, and they perish in their wicked way, you might well pray to Jehovah that you're not found blood guilty, according to the principle in Ezekiel 3:18. When I say to someone wicked, you will positively die, and you don't actually warn him, he being wicked in his error, he will die. But, brothers and sisters, his blood I shall ask back from your own hand. So, brothers, help your children. Their lives as well as your own are at stake. But do it honestly, and do it sincerely. Look, brothers, one young 12-year-old brother said this, and these are his own words. Many times, parents use sarcasm rather than an explanation to make a point to their children. Parents don't realize how grating this can be. Children, and especially teenagers, appreciate the ability just to be able to talk with their parents on a general level. Brothers, do your children take you into their confidence? If so, look, you've gained a great treasure. Cherish it and use it to their lasting good. Molly wasn't a good mother to Diana. She was too permissive. And she lost her daughter. But parents, and especially mother, must be careful to avoid being overly protective. The Medical World News, a magazine, quoted this advice from a prominent psychiatrist given to clinicians dealing with homosexual tendencies. This is what it says. Determine how much time father and son spend doing things together. Look for ways in which parents are unwittingly encouraging girlishness. Some mothers just can't bring themselves to untie the apron strings, and they chronically overprotect their sons from what they believe to be the danger, the dirt, and the evil of a boy's world. End of quote. Perhaps some of you parents are trying to protect your children from this wicked system by an effort to keep them completely separated from it. Brothers, you can't. They're still in it, just as we are. Our job as parents and servants in the congregation is to keep them from becoming a part of it. Teach them the principles they need to know to equip them to make their own decisions, and teach them, brothers, to make the right decisions. Keep their lives filled with wholesome activity and their minds filled with morally strengthening matters. And above all, show them the dangers of toying with any kind of immorality. One destructive practice, brothers, in the matter of toying with sexual immorality is that of masturbation or self-abuse. Now, this is really a form of sex worship and can lead to even more serious violations of Jehovah's righteous requirements. In almost 100% of those cases of homosexuality uncovered in the congregations, those involved had first fallen victims of the practice of habitual self-abuse, many from early childhood. Now, brothers, this can be prevented or cured. When you go home from this assembly, why not sit down with your children and study the questions from readers in the September 1st, 1959 Watchtower, dealing with the evils and dangers of masturbation. It's found on pages 541 to 544 of the 1959 Watchtower. Now, if you don't have a copy yourself, look it up in the Ministry School Library at your Kingdom Hall. Now, another excellent subject for your family Bible study are the articles on self-control in the July the 1st, 1967 issue of the Watchtower. Take your time with these studies, brothers. Look up the scriptures and talk about their application to your own specific problems. And you servants in the congregations too, take an interest in our younger brothers and sisters yourselves. Naturally, you're not going to be nosying into their personal affairs, but you are interested in their associations and what the youngsters are doing. They're a part of the congregation, and their conduct has a bearing on the spiritual condition of the congregation. But above all, brothers, you young folks yourselves, never ever stop growing and never stop recognizing the need to use your minds wisely, because the mind and the heart are the sources of our conduct. Jesus emphasized this in Matthew, the 15th chapter, beginning with verse 18. He said this, however, the things proceeding out of the mouth come out of the heart, and those things defile a man. For example, out of the heart come wicked reasonings, murders, adulteries, fornications, thieveries, false testimonies, blasphemies. These are the things defiling a man. So, young brothers and sisters, you must exercise your thinking abilities in a right way by keeping your mind and heart fixed on God and His Word. Proverbs 5:1 and 2 says, my son, to my wisdom, oh, do pay attention. To my discernment incline your ears, so as to guard thinking abilities, and may your own lips safeguard knowledge itself. And look, no matter how young you are, in years or experience, Jehovah knows who you are, and He's interested in every one of you. Don't ever make the mistake of thinking He's lost sight of you, or has forgotten you, not unless you've forgotten Him and have tried to get away from His side. Young brothers and sisters, establish for yourself a close personal relationship with Jehovah. Go to Him regularly in prayer. Seek God's mind on everything, And always ask yourself, would Jesus do this? So, all you fine young men and women in Jehovah's organization, listen. Listen to the Apostle Paul, who was like a father to Timothy, and to you too. Listen carefully to what he said. Are you listening? Let no man ever look down on your youth. On the contrary, become an example to the faithful ones in speaking, in conduct, in love, in faith, in chasteness. And God bless you as you do.